Okay.
Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tullahoma. Welcome to those of you there at church, those on Zoom, and those live streaming. Today is Sunday, August 6, 2023. This year is moving by very rapidly. So for an opening reading, we'll start with this. This comes from Abraham Lincoln. I will prepare, and someday my chance will come. I am not bound to win, but I am bound to be true. I am not bound to succeed, but I am bound to live by the light that I have. I must stand with anybody that stands right, and stand with him while he is right, and part with him when he goes wrong. I do the very best I know how, the very best I can, and I'm going to keep on doing so until the end. Once again, that was by Abraham Lincoln. We'll now do our chalice lighting, so if someone will light the chalice there at church, I'll light one here.
For today's chalice lighting, again, we'll read from Abraham Lincoln, who told us that we must work earnestly in the light. The fiery trials through which we pass will light us down in honor or dishonor to the latest generation.
And now we have announcements. So if you have an announcement, please raise your hand and we'll get that. So Tom, yes.
For those who just came in, 2 or 3 things. One, that we'll be meeting this Thursday, the writing group, and we're also meeting with the grief group with that meet at the same time, but in different rooms and separate and all that. The other thing is that we're going to go out to lunch somewhere, which we will decide before we go out, but there's a sign-up sheet out here, or if anybody on Zoom wants to come join us, Rick or those of you, anybody can show up. But we're going to just get in touch with me, and we'll make sure we look for you or meet you or whatever it takes. So we're going to go somewhere. We're open to any suggestion at this point.
All right, thank you. Other announcements? I have one, and that concerns our, if you wish to donate to the church, contribute to the church, you can write a check, send it to the UU Church of Tullahoma, P.O. Box 331 in Tullahoma. The zip code's 37388, or there's a little wooden box, shaker box in the back next on the right side of the door as you go out. You can put your contribution in there if you wish to financially support the church, and that support is greatly appreciated. Any other announcements? No. All right. We will do another reading, a responsive reading, and then we'll move on to our speaker. So this reading comes from Mother Teresa. Love cannot remain by itself. It has no meaning.
Love has to be put into action, and that action is service. Whatever form we are, able or disabled, rich or poor.
It is not how much we do, but how much love we put into the doing.
It is a lifelong sharing of love with others.
So once again, that's from Mother Teresa. So now we move to our speaker, and today's speaker is Daniel Saylor, and the title, I believe, is Understanding Spiritual Freedom. So Daniel, welcome.
Thank you. Well, it's great to be back. I don't know, some of you may remember me. I don't know how long ago it was, but I was had the opportunity to speak with you guys. And I'm not a natural public speaker. you know, so I've had to kind of figure out how to do it over the years, get comfortable with it. So when people ask you back, it's like, really? Great, okay. The other thing too, if you've done any public speaking, especially a topic like we talk and we speak about in church, right? God, life, love, you know, these huge topics. You know, I always leave and it's always like, oh, I should have said that, or worse, you know, it's like, oh, I wish I didn't say that. So it's great to have a do-over. I haven't had a do-over before. There was actually a couple things from when I spoke here before. The one, it kind of makes me cringe a little bit, but I had made this point about Eckankar, and then, let me maybe step back a moment and just explain. So, I am the RISA of Tennessee, which is Regional X Spiritual Aid, so I kind of oversee Eckankar, the teachings of Eckankar in Tennessee is my region. So just to maybe give you a little, what do they call it, the elevator speech on what Eckankar is. So really we focus a lot on the idea that we are soul, and soul being a eternal spark of God. So we look at it not that we are human beings with the soul, but that we are soul having a human experience. You know, it's that spark is, you know, what we were before we got into this body and what we're going to be when we shed this body. And I guess the biggest part is that soul exists because God loves it. You know, so all life exists because God loves it. And so some of the beliefs, we do believe in like reincarnation and karma. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And one of the concepts we have in Eckankar is something we call soul travel. It's different than, say, astral projection or that sort of thing. But the basic idea behind it is that we don't have to wait to the death of the human body to experience heaven. You know, we can experience it here and now in this lifetime. So my little do-over, I was explaining, I was making this point when in my talk about, so this idea of like reincarnation, you know, it's soul progressing, you know, it's kind of a journey for soul, self-realization, God realization, but that we believe, you know, soul, then its ultimate destiny is to become a co-worker with God, which is a little bit different than becoming one with God. And so I was making this little point, and then in the Q&A though, somebody shared this experience about how they had this profound oneness with God, or, you know, being one with God. And so the question, I forget exactly how the question was, but it's kind of like, well, are you saying that's not, you know, compatible, whatever? And I was kind of like, well, yeah, you know, and I kind of missed the point there. Inadvertently like invalidated that experience without really meaning to, because that's an awesome experience, right? And it's, well, first of all, who am I to judge somebody else's experience, right? It's like, you know, we have these experiences like that and they're special. And so I was stuck on trying to make this little intellectual point that doesn't really matter in the big scheme of things. So that's my little do-over for that. You know, those experiences are special. The other thing that came up, and this isn't really so much a do-over, but I thought it might be a nice little segue into this idea of spiritual freedom. It was what we call it in Eckankar. But you know, the question came up, is Eckankar a cult? You know, and I think we kind of laughed it off a little bit or whatever. But it got me thinking. Even after that, I was thinking, well, you know, how does one talk about that? And what really makes a cult or whatever? And the one term that came to mind was isolation. That was, you know, it's like, because it's a power trip usually, right? So it's kind of like isolate you from friends or family, you know, or to make it easier, or isolate you from your money, of course, is a big one. And so as I was thinking about this, I was thinking, yeah, you know, I can say how, well, no, Eckankar, we're pro-family, you know, we're definitely support the family. But then I was thinking about that and I was like, well, but you know, it's not mandatory. And it was just the idea that, look, we're all like, you take family, we all have our own family experiences, right? And families can be messy. And, you know, and so we work with these things as best we can, because ultimately we're reaching for love and doing the right thing. Sometimes you got to pull away, and that's the best thing, you know, maybe for a time or whatever. Other times, you know what, I got to go the extra mile in a relationship or something like that. And so what we're really looking for is, well, how do we know, you know, what's the best course to take? And so for me, it's like any religious path or spiritual path, you know, can help, or, you know, ideally can help with understanding the situation, what decisions to make. And that's what draws me to Eckankar, because I feel like it has some tools. So I just wanted to share some of those tools that we use, and not just with family, I mean with any experience in life, whatever we're doing. I was going to share this story, and I was like, oh, don't share that story, but it happened years ago, but with a pet we had, and of course, you know, for many of us, our pets are our family, right? And it was a dog named Kid, and you know, she was one of these, I should say, was one of these, you know, 110 miles per hour and stuff, and it wasn't really my dog, it was another family member's, but got a problem in its back, kind of went paralyzed basically, right, and was suffering and things. And so a decision was made to, you know, take him to the vet and, you know, have him put down. And so my mom was always the one that had to do that growing up, so I was like, I'll do it, Mom, you know. And I wasn't arrogant or anything, but I was more like, you know, I know about soul. I was, like I said, I was young, I was new to like Eckankar and these concepts of soul, and, you know, so I took Kid down there, and so the vet was doing his thing, and again, I don't want to get too graphic or anything, but it was just one point, it just reached his head out, and it was like, for me, it was like he was trying to get every last ounce out of life, you know, in that moment. And so I left, and I was just like, oh my gosh, you know, it was like, suddenly it was like heavy heart. And like I said, I was young, I hadn't dealt a lot with mortality or whatever. And there was just this guilt. Oh, we should have done this. Oh, maybe we reacted too fast. And I was carrying all this guilt around. Went on for about a week or two, and then one night I have this dream. And so in this dream, I'm walking this little meadow. I could tell there's all this brush on the one side. I can tell there's probably a little brook or something there. Well, then all of a sudden, out of the bushes came Kid, right? Just bounding out 110 miles an hour like usual. And then it saw me and just stopped and looked at me, and it just gave me this look of like, you know better than this, you know I'm fine, and you know soul lives on past the human body, and it, you know, it's like, you know, everything's good, and then just bounded back off, you know, into the bushes again. But for me, you know, it was like, it just took away all that guilt, that feeling of guilt and stuff, you know. It doesn't necessarily take away all the heavy heart, you know, you still miss your loved ones and all of that. It takes a while for all the healing to go through. But, you know, for me, like, so in Eckankar, we do use the dreams a lot, the dream state a lot. And, well, like in that dream, there really wasn't no symbology in it, right? That was just a thing that happened, right? And of course, everybody can have their own opinions. Well, that was just my subconscious, or that was higher, you know, but I think it was Kid visiting me on the inner planes, right, on another dimension or whatever, and just, you know, letting me know it's okay, you know. So that's, you know, because that kind of guilt and stuff, we can carry that a long way, or just that heavy heart, and really we can carry it through lifetimes. So I want to just talk a little bit about the whole past life part of the Ek teachings. And it was funny, a couple weekends ago I was visiting with some old Ek friends, and well, they weren't necessarily old, but old friends that have been in Eckankar, and they were sharing how when they first got into Ek, the thing that was the hardest part was the idea of reincarnation. And it kind of made me laugh. I thought, gosh, of all the weird things we believe in Eckankar, you know, that was the one that you had trouble with. And I could see, if you don't see it in context, or if you haven't had any experiences with that, you know, it can maybe seem a little strange. But, you know, at the same time, it makes a lot of sense. It explains why, you know, people come in all different situations. You know, some are like great at math, you know, or great at money. Others, you know, or why somebody comes in you know, in a rich family but grow up miserable. Other people come in, you know, poor family and they're great. It's this, because we carry the baggage in from other lifetimes. But it's all about taking us to a certain place, right? It's a soul's unfoldment. You know, you could look at, for us, we look at Earth as like a big classroom, you know, for soul to learn divine love over power, basically, right? So, one of the things, so with the past lives, you know, we kind of are still in touch with those past lives up to about the age of 5. Like sometimes if you have a toddler or something, you can ask, you know, what were you when you were bigger? And it's amazing sometimes the answers you would get. But the veil is drawn, and it's really kind of a blessing, right? Because we can have each lifetime kind of new, even though we're carrying things in from past. And you know, I have friends, and again, everybody's different how you'll work with it, or even if you work with it, is going to be different. And I have a friend in Nashville, and he can just remember stuff. It's like, oh yeah, you know, he can remember a lot of, I think the lifetimes affecting this lifetime for him was like in old England and stuff. And he can remember battles and, oh, I died on that, blah, 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 blah. See, I've always had the opposite experience. For me, it was always been little snapshots. I'd only get a snapshot. So I kind of joke, it's like, see, I did this extensive study of past lives in a past life. So I don't have to do it this time around. But it, you know, it's all about, again, where you're at and what you need. Because sometimes, like, if you have an affinity for someplace, either like or dislike, or a person, like or dislike, or going back to the family, you know, those harder relationships or whatever, or the good relationships, they usually have some sort of karmic seed to the past, right? And so how you work with that, it can help dissipate that karma, right? So you don't necessarily need to see the whole thing to work with it. Again, so I would always get this snapshot, and then it was always the challenge of, you know, being like Sherlock Holmes and trying to figure out what it was, but it's not so much of what did I do and who was I and how, you know, that's one part of it, but it was more of like, again, for soul, what was the gift of that experience? Because even the hard lifetimes, even the hard experiences, right, in the end are gifts for us. They usually teach us the best lessons, right? The easier things don't always teach us the best lessons. And so, so again, though, everybody's different, like I was saying, and some people, it's if you can maybe tap into that past life, you can see maybe the why you have a rough relationship with somebody, for example. But it also can help just dissipate that karma. You know how like used to like working on old TVs and stuff. They say be careful because there's like the capacitor in there will hold electricity. So if you touch it, it will give you quite a shock, right? So if you know what you're doing, you can drain that energy out before you start working on it. And so I always looked at karma that way. It's like it's just this ball of energy kind of bound up, and you want to dissipate that energy, you know, so that the energy can flow more smoothly and with more love. So anyway, that's working with that is you know, can really be a benefit. But we have this saying in Eck, you know, it's like, well, the law of love oversees the law of karma, right? So sometimes it can be helpful going back. You can see the cause. It can help dissipate that energy, and then you can kind of deal with it in the present. But sometimes just, you know, going straight to the heart, you don't have to mess with all of that too, right? So sometimes it can be a tool. Sometimes you don't need it. I guess the last thing, and just, you know, and I'm giving this just from an Eckankar perspective, but so we do have a spiritual leader, a spiritual guide in Eckankar. The full title is the Mahanta, the Living Master. And so there's always a living master in, at the head of the teaching at any given time. So it's not a place of worship, 'cause soul, each of us have the same potential as soul, right? So it's really more, and we use the word master, but it really is like, the master craftsman, the master karate guy or whatever, and you're the student type of thing. So it's not any kind of master slave kind of thing, but it's hard to explain, working on the inner, even in the dream state, with a spiritual leader. And I guess your group, people come from all walks of life and maybe still have that strong connection with Jesus, or maybe some of the Eastern religions or whatever. So those are all very valid and all that. If that's what connects with you. I'm trying to think of one of the experiences of working with the master. Just even one of my first experiences was Paul Twitchell was the master that brought the teachings back out in 1965, and so when I began in EC, I was a teenager still, and so all the books were his books at that point, and so I have this dream, and I'm following him around the house, and he's doing all kinds of chores and different things, and so finally we go out to change the oil in the car. So we're under the car, and all I kind of see is his face because there's the light up there, and he asked me some questions, and I said something about commitment with some friends or something, and I remember he went, commitment. And then he just started speaking, and I knew he was giving me this discourse on commitment, but it was like somebody hit the mute button. So after all commitment, I didn't hear anything, but I just looking at his face and hearing him, talk, and I knew I was getting this discourse. And so later in the dream, we're back in his house, and he was ironing, and I was looking at these big tapestries that he was ironing, and it had a swan, which in Nekinkarwe, the swan is a symbol of soul, and different ones, but all of a sudden I recognized, wait a second, that's the master, and I remember turning to him, and he was just standing there looking at me with this smile, but it was just this gaze, we call it the gaze of the master, the darshan. It was like just that recognition with the inner master, it was just this moment, and so I was saying it's not a position of worship, but there is a love bond that gets created there, but it's like any relationship, it kind of develops, but working with the inner master, working with your karma as you're working through this life, it's really a gift to have that on the inner planes, and so that love bond has grown, and right now the living Ek master for like the last 40 some years has been Harold Clem. So he's actually getting older now. He used to be a young man, so like all of us, we all used to be young. Well, some of us are young men anyway. And then we just did the meditation. So one of our main, we call them spiritual exercises, and there's different ones. There's literally hundreds of them, but one of our most basic spiritual exercises is to put our attention on or sing this word Hu. It's H-U, and it's just an ancient name for God, and it just has we call it our love song to God. But anytime, we're especially like nervous or in trouble or needing just relief, and we just sing it silently inside, and I'll just sing it here out loud, but it's just Hu. So even in Ek, whenever we start our meetings and stuff, that's our meditation. We do a Hu song, for a few moments, singing the Hu. So it's something you can try next time you have a question or have a concern or anything like that. So that's about all I had. I don't know, I think that might have been about 20 minutes. But thank you once again. I appreciate it.
Thank you, David. All right, so we will close with our traditional the closing song as we leave this friendly place. So Catherine, I'll go ahead and sing that.
Everybody else can please sing.
Yeah, okay, stand up and sing along. Let's see if we can make this work.
Okay.
Catherine, I'll lead, and hopefully we'll be able to sync up.
As we leave this friendly place, love give light to every face. May the kindness which we learn light our hearts till we return.
All right, so let's think about the